Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's training and preview of the Journyx Mobile 12.1 app. And today, Meredith is going to be showing you what we have in store for the next release of mobile, and just, so you can give some of your employees a little bit of love by giving them an option to easily track time anywhere that they are, anywhere that they're working. Using the Journyx mobile app, you'll get to see sort of how it works, and just sort of a basic overview of that, and then like I say, what's in store for the next release. And the mobile app is a great way for all of your employees to easily track their time and their expenses wherever they're working, and that syncs back to the desktop app as well. So if you're thinking of moving your employees to mobile, this is a great webinar for you to be on. So thank you for coming, and we will be taking Q&A at the end of this webinar, and you can type those questions into the questions box in your GoToWebinar panel. So without further ado, I will be turning it over to Meredith. Meredith?
Thanks, Gary. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, we retooled our mobile app in fall of 2019. We had an app that was based on some technology that would essentially try to share code with, the iOS iPhone app and the Android app, and it wasn't working very well. It wasn't very stable. And so we built brand new apps that were specific to each platform. So they're native to Android and native to iOS. And so that was a big effort to retool those apps, but we're now essentially rebuilding those, to include all of the key functionality that you guys would like to have in a mobile app. And so what we've begun here, starting with this release here in February, due out in the next week or two, is kind of a series of monthly mobile app releases, building out some of the features that you enjoy on the browser, on the server side with your browser, that you could also then do in the mobile app itself. So we're going to look today at the mobile app in general and look at some of the features that we've added for this particular version for February 2020, which will be labeled 12.1. And primarily what we'll look at is custom entry. So those of you who do time and something else, or expense and something else, or time, expense, and something else, that custom entry that you've renamed and retooled to track other things related to your time or expenses. And we'll also take a look at, there was, when we originally shipped Mobile 12, when you needed to edit an entry in the mobile app, there was kind of a 2-click process to do that. So we've added usability improvements there where it can be done with 1 click, and we'll show that to you today too. And then afterwards, I'll give you an idea of what's coming. Like I said, and these will roughly should be releasing new functionality kind of every month, at least through May, and probably through all the way through the end of the year. Provided that the work that we can do can be done quickly enough to kind of follow that monthly release cycle. But we do have plans currently to kind of release, like I said, once a month, or roughly once a month through May for certain, and we'll look at what's coming next. But let's start by taking a look at 12.1. So give me a moment to switch over to my phone. Okay, it was actually pretty fast. All right. So if you've never seen our mobile app, we will do a quick tour of kind of everything that's in here in mobile 12 with the Mobile 12 app. But we're starting on a dashboard, and I am logged in as somebody who can both approve other people's time, expense, and custom entries, as well as enter my own. So the dashboard kind of tells me where I am with my own time status there. You can see at the top, and then it's got my various approval queues. In this case, the custom entry, I've retitled equipment. So we're in this instance, I'm tracking equipment in that third area, the third tracking area. But you may call it anything that you like. So that we refer to it as custom, and of course, customers decide what to call it. So this is the dashboard, and then we can see on activity, access to all the various things that I can track. So I have my time, I have my expense, and then I have my custom, in this case, called equipment. If I only have time, I'll only see time here. If I have time and expense, I'll only see time and expense, and so on, or I might just only have time and equipment. For today, since we're looking at everything, I have access to all 3 types of sheets for tracking, and so I can see them right here in my mobile app. So obviously the new part here is the equipment tracking or the custom tracking, whatever it is that you call it. And much like what you're used to in the browser, the tracking is very similar to what you would see for time and expense, except that you may or may not be tracking hours, for example. So what you'll see here is a decimal entry type of format, so that, you know, if you're tracking days or you're tracking, you know, widgets completed, whatever the case may be, it's pretty agnostic to what you're tracking. And so we can see, you know, what I've entered for today. Oh, don't go to sleep. There we go. And I can add to it by clicking on the plus button. Now, one thing that you'll see here that we have planned for our next release, and we'll go over that as we look at our list for next release, is that I was viewing my equipment, but it didn't pop up to create equipment. It starts at add time. In our next release, if you're viewing equipment, it will automatically just start here at add equipment. So that is one usability improvement that we have planned for our next monthly release. But currently today, when you hit that you know, add button, it will start on add time. And so then you have to pick add expense or add equipment. You can also, of course, change the day. But we'll go ahead and stick to today for adding our entry. Then you walk through the usual process. If you have any memorized entries, you'll see them here as favorites so that you can enter quickly. In this case, I don't have memorized entries. And then you walk through a wizard, right, of all of the selection items that you have on the screen. If any of these fields only have one value in them, then it will skip it because you don't need to select anything, right? So this is only takes you to these fields if you have more than one value that you could select from. Otherwise, it'll just fill it in for you, and you can skip through. So if you pick a project where there's only one, you know, option for all the other fields, you'll come right back here to enter your values. We do have a decimal point here, so if we need to track this in more than, you know, whole numbers, we have that option. And then, like everything else, you also have the option to attach pictures. And so it'll ask you for your permissions the first time. And we'll go ahead and just pick something from our gallery. There we go. And then finally, if we want to add a comment, we can do so right here. And save the entry. And it confirms the entry, and we can see it here. So it works pretty much like what, if you've seen any of our other demonstrations of time and expense, it's very similar. I'll go ahead and show one of the usability improvements here. So prior to 12.1, if I wanted to change either one of these entries here that you can see on the screen, I had to go to view details, which is fine, and I can see all the information that I need to see. And then I would need to click on that item to edit it. So now, going back really quickly. So now we're viewing our day again. Now I can choose one right here. If I know, I don't need to see the details to know that which one I want to edit. I know I want to edit that one, you know, that's got the attachment right there. I can just click directly on it. And there we go. So maybe I got my time a little off, or I had a little more time allocated to it that I needed to add. So one click, like I said, there's still the option, of course, to view all of your details if you need to, but one click will take you to edit the entries that you can see here for the day. So it just saves a little time, a little more intuitive. I think most people thought when they clicked on them in the old app that it would do something, and you had to go down to the view details to be able to edit that. So 1 click or 2 clicks if you need to see more information. Just like time and expense, custom also gives users the option to submit their sheets. So you can see icons across the top. We've got the clock, we've got the dollar, and then we've got the document for kind of a more generic, we don't know what you're tracking there. So we have an icon there for submitting your sheets. And you can go back and see other sheets. Maybe I want to submit for last week. I can click through on that day to see what it was that I tracked. And I can submit my sheet. So pretty straightforward. All the same things that you would expect for time and expense. So we'll take a look at just one other submit area just so you can kind of see. Oh, I'm just going to do this in approvals. So that pretty well covers what custom entry does. Like I said, it's very similar process to time and expense. But then, of course, it also includes the approval side of things. So I submitted my custom entry to someone, and that someone can also come into the mobile app and do the approvals. So we can just look real quick. Like I said, we've got time approvals here. Take a look at that queue. And again, I can, drill down on a day to see details before I approve something. And then, of course, you will confirm that I've approved it. So then we've also added the section for custom entry, in this case, equipment, and it works exactly the same way. I open up a queue, I can switch sheets, I can view the specifics, I can reject the sheet. And I get a confirmation that the sheet is rejected. Or I can approve the sheet. And again, we get our confirmation. Refresh view, there we go. You probably need to actually do a little work there to make sure it refreshes your queues as soon as you return to the dashboard screen there. But as you can see, your approval queues are updated for the things that you reject or approve. So that covers our custom entry and our usability improvements for this release. We'll go ahead and jump back out for a moment and show you what we have coming next. And then if there are any questions about how something works, we can pull the mobile app back up and take a look. So obviously to release for February. We are target date on February 14th to have to be done. And it's not February 14th, it'll certainly be in the next week or two. It's very close to finishing up all of the QA. We also have the editing entries directly, which, as I said, was more intuitive and, of course, more efficient. One click to edit. Coming next, we will for expense, and I know some people are waiting on that to start using expense tracking in the mobile app. And that's essentially where you will, instead of adding a currency amount, you add miles and it converts it to the currency amount. We also will be working on some date picker usability. I show you an example where I was viewing my custom entry, my equipment, to see what I'd entered so far, and then I hit the add icon, plus icon, and it took me to add time instead of add equipment. Those are the types of things that we're going to be improving. There's also an issue where Android, if you go to add time for last week and save, take you Today, your time disappeared because it didn't take you to the activity screen for the day you saved time. So we'll get all of that buttoned up so that there's again less clicking and no confusion about what you've just done. When it confirms that you save, you see that it's saved on the day that you saved. So a bunch of work there just to make that all a little smoother. And then finally, we have some again, it's a good ability to time enter more quickly. I think if you guys are familiar with this in the browser, you can have your entries from last week, everything you track time against last week or the last 2 weeks, whatever it is that you have your time entry screen set to do, show up for this week so that you can continue using those, because of course we all tend to work things that go over several periods. And so we're, in addition to the memorized entries, the favorites that we already have access to in mobile, we're also going to give you the option to use your kind of favorites from last week, what you used last week in mobile as well. So that's coming. And then mobile doesn't currently have support for in-out times, and those of you who use allocation screens may be required to put those in-out times in, so you might have to pull up a mobile browser to get that done, but we're going to be adding support so that you can do it all in the app quickly and easily. So that'll include punch button and then eventually the manual in-out time entry as well. So that covers what I wanted to show you guys today. Let's open up the floor for questions. And like I said, if we need to look at how something works, I can pull the mobile app back.
Great, thank you, Meredith. And before we get into questions, I just want to give a quick plug. Meredith's going to be covering our roadmap during our virtual customer conference, which is coming up on February 19th. It's an all-day conference, but you can watch it and attend it from the comfort of wherever it is that you're working. It's all virtual. And I will put the link in the chat box in your GoToWebinar panel for you to register if you're interested. There's still time, still a couple of weeks left to register. And we will also be covering our basic administration and basic use of our mobile app as well during that conference. So register today, and we do have emails out there for discounts. But if you want to get a 75% discount, then you can enter the code JXLove75 when you register, and I've put that link in the chat. I will also include that in the follow-up email with this recording. So if you are interested in moving to mobile, then you have the recording of this webinar that you can pass on to your colleagues as well. So getting into some questions, first one, are you planning to release a timer functionality? So if I'm working on a task, I can start a timer and then stop it whenever I'm done, and it will automatically add the time spent to my timesheet.
Yes, that is definitely on our roadmap. What I showed you is just kind of near-term roadmap, but that's in the next to later bucket. So late this year, early next year is the likely time frame for that. But yes, we definitely have that on the roadmap, and I think we see that as extremely valuable for people tracking work. We also have some similar functionality where essentially we can capture your in and out times based on joining a network or GPS type geofencing. So those are all kind of related, but the timer for actually, like, if you manually start it, let's say pick a project, start a timer, that is planned for, like I said, later this year, early next year. So if you'd like to provide additional feedback on what you'd like it to do, how you would use it, please feel free, because we always appreciate more information on what would make it most valuable to you.
Excellent. And our next question, in an earlier release, time entered on the mobile app was in minutes, where our setup was for decimal. Has that been corrected to match our setups?
So, right, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, yeah, in the old app, you had to enter things in hours, minutes, minutes. In the new app, you have the choice. When you pull up the keyboard for entering hours, you can enter it with the colon, or you can enter it in decimal format. I believe there has been some inconsistency in what our contractors did that we're cleaning up. I believe they both save the data right now in hours, minutes, minutes format. And so we will be working to change that display based on what you have selected for your time entry screen. However, like I said, there's no, you can enter in decimal format. It's just going to convert it in the display to the hours and minutes, and we will follow up with some cleanup to, like I said, respect your time in your browser server time entry screen settings so that it will show it in decimal. So decimal entry, yes. Display in some areas, possibly not, but we will clean that up.
And our last question, which the answer is yes, but you can explain some of the benefits. Is the app recommended more than using the website on a phone? So there are lots of benefits, Meredith, to using the app, right?
Sure, and well, and there are a lot of shades to that question, and so we will be providing guidance. But the app, when it comes to basic time and expense entry, attaching receipts, submitting your sheet, basic approvals where you don't need to drill down into massive amounts of data, it's definitely recommended, and it's considered the easiest way to do these things on a phone. However, there will be some features and functionality that we will probably never support in the mobile app because it makes it too complex. It doesn't make sense. And so you will continue to handle those sorts of things in the browser. And so we have a parallel effort, particularly with Journyx 12, to make the screens, the browser-based screens, responsive to those mobile devices so that they resize properly and give you access to what you need. So the answer is a little complex, but in terms of what is covered by the mobile app, we are trying to make that as efficient as possible. So if the mobile app does it, that's probably the best place to do it. But at the same time, we are, constantly doing work on our browser-based screens as well to make them more mobile device friendly.
Great. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you everyone for attending. And we will be sending a recording of this webinar out as soon as we have it available, and it will also be posted in the user community at community.journyx.com. And again, Meredith will be covering our product roadmap during the Journyx Virtual Customer Conference on February 19th. So there's still time to register you and your team for that. We do have discounts for registering more than one person at one time. So definitely register your team that you want to attend this conference as well. So thank you again for coming. Have a great rest of your day.